Spotify dominates music streaming, but here's the problem. If Taylor Swift, Drake, and Beyoncé disappear tomorrow, Spotify could be in serious trouble. You probably have Spotify running in the background right now while working, driving, or hitting the gym. Listening to your favorite artist without giving a second thought to how it gets there. In 2006, music piracy was completely destroying the record industry. Napster, LimeWire, and torrent sites meant millions of people were downloading music for free. Then a Swedish entrepreneur named Daniel Ek came along with a wild idea. What if, instead of fighting piracy, you gave people unlimited access to virtually every song on Earth, legally for $10 a month? It saved the music industry. Today, Spotify has over 600 million users, holds roughly 30% of the global music streaming market, and generates over $13 billion a year. So I'm going to ask you the question nobody stops to think about while listening to their favorite playlist. If Spotify dominates the entire music streaming world, why does it struggle so hard to make a single dollar of actual profit? The answer isn't bad management. It's a structural trap built into the core foundation of the music business. Let's get into it. Here's the thing nobody explains when they talk about digital streaming platforms. When Netflix sells you a monthly subscription, its costs stay mostly fixed. Whether you watch 5 hours of movies or 500 hours, Netflix pays a flat licensing fee or a one-time production cost for its shows. The more you watch, the higher Netflix's profit margins get. Spotify has the exact opposite problem. Spotify operates on a per-stream royalty model. Every single time a song plays on the app, Spotify has to pay out a fraction of a cent, roughly 3 cents to 5 cents to the rights holders. Think about what that means. If you pay $11 a month for Spotify Premium and listen to thousands of songs, you actually cost Spotify more money the more you use the app. In fact, roughly 70 cents of every single dollar Spotify earns goes straight out the door to pay record labels, publishers, and artists. After paying for servers, marketing, staff, and app development, Spotify is left with razor-thin margins, or negative numbers. Now, I want to be fair because I don't do surface-level analysis. You might be asking, why can't Spotify just renegotiate those payout rates and keep more of the money? Because Spotify doesn't hold the leverage the big three record labels do. Universal Music Group, Sony Music, and Warner Music Group control roughly 70% to 80% of all popular music on the planet. If Spotify tries to push back against their royalty demands, the labels can threaten to pull entire catalogs, Drake, Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, the Beatles, off the platform. Without those mega artists, Spotify loses its users overnight to Apple Music or Amazon Music. The labels know this, so they hold all the cards. So how does a company trapped by 70% payout margins survive? They try to own the content that doesn't require paying record labels. And that brings us to Spotify's massive billion-dollar pivot, podcasts and audiobooks. Starting around 2019, Spotify spent well over $1 billion acquiring podcast studios, tech platforms, and exclusive rights to major shows like the Joe Rogan Experience. Why? Because when you listen to a podcast, Spotify doesn't owe a per-stream royalty to Universal Music Group. The advertising revenue generated from that podcast episode stays almost entirely with Spotify. Podcasting was Spotify's attempt to build its own loss leader system. Use music to acquire hundreds of millions of daily users, then shift their attention to non-music audio where Spotify actually gets to keep the profit. Now, here is the reframe that changes everything about how you look at the streaming industry. Spotify isn't competing in a fair market. It is competing against multi-trillion-dollar tech titans who treat music as an afterthought. Apple doesn't need Apple Music to turn a massive profit on its own. Apple Music exists to keep you locked inside the iPhone and AirPod ecosystem. Amazon doesn't care if Amazon Music breaks even. It's just another perk bundled into Prime to keep you shopping on their site. Google uses YouTube Music to feed its ad engine. For Apple, Amazon, and Google, music streaming is just a loss leader, a product sold with tiny margins to support a much bigger business. But for Spotify, music streaming is the entire business. They are trying to survive on a standalone product that their competitors give away as a promotional tool. Quick favor before the final takeaway. If this breakdown gave you a new way to look at how businesses operate, hit that subscribe button. I make research-backed case studies on business strategy, mental models, and how the world's biggest companies really make their money. No hype, just the strategy. So what's the broader lesson here? You don't need to run a global media app to understand the principle at work. 1. Beware of middleman lock-in. If your suppliers control your essential raw materials, your margins will always belong to them. 2. Platform versus ecosystem. Competing against companies that use your core product as a loss leader is one of the hardest positions in business. 3. Diversify low-margin usage. When high usage hurts your bottom line, you must aggressively build alternative revenue streams that scale with your audience. Spotify changed how the world consumes culture, turning physical CDs and digital downloads into a seamless utility. It proved that giving users unlimited convenience could defeat piracy, but it also proved that dominating an industry doesn't guarantee owning its profits. Drop me a comment below. Do you use Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube Music? And do you think Spotify's podcast strategy will save it? I read every comment, and the best questions turn into future videos. Hit the bell so you don't miss next week's business case study, and I'll see you in the next one.